Every once in a while, a movie comes along with a premise so clever, you have to watch it. I remember having that reaction with Phone Booth. I was 13 at the time, and that was my earliest exposure to the concept of a movie that all takes place in one location. Well, in 2025, it's happening again. That's right, finally, Phone Booth 2. No, I'm talking about Good Boy. The main character is a dog named and played by Indy, a Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever and the director-co-writer Ben Leonberg's real-life pet. The movie is all told from Indy's point of view, with the camera often placed at his height close to the ground. He isn't a talking or animated dog, but a real live canine, coaxed through a film's production with treats and commands. It also exploits the age-old idea that dogs have a nose for the spectral. When a dog barks at nothing, check your premise, and check your premises, because there's definitely a ghost around. Indy apparently loved making the movie over the course of 3 years. It got to the point where he associated the camera with having to do something, like when a dog sees a leash and knows it's time to go out. Indy would see the camera and know, time to stare, tilt my head, or bark at a ghost. In fact, if they had to film a scene without him, they'd have to make sure he wasn't around to see the camera, or else he'd go into acting mode and steal the scene. What a diva! That's like me when I see a microphone and I just have to start reviewing movies. Speaking of which, time for my full spoiler review of Good Boy. It starts with a nosebleed. Not Indy's nose, don't worry. It's just a stupid human, Todd. The dog is fine. Todd's sister Vera finds him with his nose bleeding profusely and calls an ambulance. Indy has a very concerned look on his face. Or does he? This is part of the movie's magic, and a great experiment for our tendency to imprint emotions on animals. That's not to say you're always reading your dog's emotions incorrectly when you're in the room with them, but that's a different scenario from watching a movie, where the dog is on the other side of a screen, and a director is intentionally setting a mood. When Indy stares, and the film sets a context that something concerning is happening, an intense focus suddenly becomes a deep concern. I always love with my family's dog the look on his face when you're holding a tennis ball and he's just locked in. That's a stare more intense than Jason Patric's in The Lost Boys. The movie then goes through a montage of Indy growing up. You see him as a puppy. Aw, look at him. Indy visiting Todd at the hospital, clearly very ill. That's when things take a dark turn. Todd decides to get out of town, so he retreats to their late grandpa's place. From the moment they arrive, Indy is already spotting figures in the dark, hearing a ghost dog whimpering from the basement. When Todd gets on the phone with Vera, he drops a couple of hints. He mentions Grandpa's dog, Bandit. Vera asks, didn't he have a bunch of dogs? Yeah, but they kept running away. Clearly they were smarter than the humans and knew something malevolent was here. Todd complains how Indy is the opposite. He never leaves him alone. And Indy makes the cutest face while he says that. That is the crux of this movie, Indy's undying loyalty to Todd. To be honest though, I never really got invested in Todd or cared about his fate. He's irritable throughout most of the movie, and generally not outright mean to Indy or anything, but we just want to reach out, pet him, and scratch him behind the ear, and Todd mostly just tolerates him being around. That's thanks to the illness taking its toll, making him more irritable. I just think it might have helped if I got more of a glimpse at Todd and Indy's relationship prior to things going south. So when Todd isn't himself, I at least have an idea what Todd being himself actually looks like before the pain and suffering began. As things stand, I didn't care for him and didn't feel invested in his fate, which means most of the tension comes from concern over Indy's well-being. But the movie isn't really about that, because Indy isn't trying to save himself. He's trying to save Todd. So to me, not a whole lot of tension. But I know a lot of people who got quite invested, thanks to Indy alone. Todd is sort of irrelevant. He's more of a stand-in for the dog owner. We love dogs, in part for their loyalty and protectiveness. This movie lets us simmer in that for 73 minutes. Where exactly that loyalty is pointed, in this case Todd, Doesn't matter. The idea alone is enough, as long as you can bring that to the movie, the same way we imprint all the right emotions on Indy. There's more of Indy seeing things or hearing things while Todd is oblivious. What are you staring at, boy? Come on, let's go. The next day, they take a walk past Todd's family graveyard. They all died pretty young. What is with this family? How many red flags do they need? All the dogs keep running away. Everyone in the family keeps dying. If you don't want to entertain the idea that a malevolent presence is around, you might at least want to check the place for a carbon dioxide leak or poisonous mold. These moments were also obstacles for me to care about Todd. He feels less like a character and more like a mouthpiece for the rare bits of info we need to generally understand the haunting scenario. And at the same time, because the little dialogue he has are these lore drops, it makes him seem really oblivious. All these dogs keep running away. Everyone that lives here keeps dying. The basement smells like death. While we put the pieces together, he marches ignorantly toward oblivion. And I think I would have been more okay with that if it were diluted by moments of actually fleshing out his character. But on a pure visceral level, look how cute he is. Indy, I mean, not Todd. Watching him navigate a storyline, even if it isn't a particularly complex one, is intoxicating. The fun of watching a great dog video on YouTube, but multiplied and extended. On that walk, a figure approaches Indy. Oh, it's just their neighbor, warning them it's fox hunting season. He's got traps and snares all over these woods. He also mentions after they found Todd's grandpa's body, they never found his dog, Bandit. That night, that neighbor lends Todd a generator, and as he gets it running, Indy spots something.
Hey, knock it off.
Yeah, isn't Todd great? Later that night, Indy dreams of their grandpa's dog, Bandit, in the basement, and in the reflection of Bandit's eye, something rushing toward him. The next day, Indy sniffs at the door to that basement. On the other side of it, we see scratches. Clearly Bandit was trying to get out. When Todd leaves Indy home alone, the hardest part to watch, Indy whining when he leaves. I don't know if there's a sound in nature that punches my soul harder than that. When you're trying to leave the house, and dogs say louder than words ever could, "Please don't go." Indy waits by the window until night. He hears Ghost Bandit calling to him again, and this time sees him too. He follows the apparition upstairs and finds Bandit's bandana. Sniffing it gives him visions of the basement, the wall cracking open, a dark, muddy figure reaching out. Todd comes back from the hospital. He's not doing well. Indy tries to comfort him, but Todd is not in the mood. That's fine by Indy. He's fine to simply watch over him. Over the days, Todd gets sicker. Indy sinks deeper into his ghostly investigation with escalating visions, sounds, sensations. It's less about the story here and more about the experience, watching Indy in action. If you don't get bought into the Todd character, it does risk feeling a tad repetitive. Watching Indy perk up at the sight of a dark figure is cute the first 10 times, but after a while, who am I kidding? I could watch that all day. It was definitely the right choice to keep the movie at a brisk hour and 13 minutes long. And if I did start to fatigue on the concept, I perk back up once the door is slammed shut. Todd is in one room, Indy in the other. Todd passes out, and before Indy can get to him, the dark, muddy figure shuts the door between them. It's the first time, really, where a true obstacle is put in Indy's path. Until now, it's mostly been him seeing things, following things, observing, expressing concern to his human only to be rebuffed. But now, what is he going to do? Time for some real action. And what is the dark figure, by the way, tormenting them? It isn't really explained, and it doesn't really matter. Talking to Vulture about the core idea of the movie, director Ben Leonberg said this: "The big picture is all ghost stories are essentially about the idea of mortality. I thought a lot of us learn about death and dying through our pets, because they don't live as long as us. But what would it be like if the shoe was on the other foot, if the animal were to experience the encroaching specter of death? It's about our animal's total innocence and how the love we feel for our pets is so uncomplicated." Of course, you could tell that story without a supernatural element, but that would be a lot less fun. This movie opts for essentially both. Todd is sick and deteriorating. There are hospital visits. But there's also this thing, a dark, undefined entity that's coming for him, the same way it came for his grandfather. I don't know if that thing is a demon or ghost, or if it's death itself. But if it's not, it may as well be, because thematically, that's what it comes to represent. Death. The thing forcing Indy to learn about death by taking away his owner. And best friend, if you say so, I say, Indy, you can do a lot better. So, Indy is locked in the room while Todd is on the other side of the door. Indy whines and barks. That gets him nowhere. He spots the open window. He looks at the door and back out the window. It really is a great magic trick. You feel like you're watching him think about it. If I go through that window, will it help me get to him? It made me laugh though when he looks out the window and sees the awning, so it seems like he's calculating. Okay, I can hop onto the awning. Nope, he just jumps out and lands right in the bushes. No, don't worry, Lindbergh did not toss his dog out the window. They had a stuffed stunt double. And if they don't sell that thing online as merchandise, what a missed opportunity. Indy runs off to find their neighbor for help, but gets caught in one of his fox traps. Todd finds him, and does he thank the good boy for his hard work? No, he punishes him, ties him outside to the doghouse. I'll tell you this, there really is only one good boy in this movie. And I get why Todd is more and more cantankerous. He's likely in constant pain and basically moved himself into a budget overlook hotel. He isn't himself. The problem is, we never got a chance to meet himself. And maybe that's the point. That's how much better good boys are than us. I'm looking at Todd and I'm like, Indy, forget about him. Just run away. Maybe find Vera instead. But he never gives up. Even now, when Todd callously tosses him a bowl, Indy looks at him with the same "you won't get rid of me that easy" eyes. Indy gets on top of his doghouse, and even when it rains on him, he only stares at the light in the window, at Todd coughing, at the dark figure, a specter of death. Then the dark figure approaches Indy. We don't see it happen directly, but we see the shadows. It grabs Indy and he jumps out of its arms, then escapes into the doghouse. The dark thing grabs at him, pulls on the chains, and Indy gets the idea. He tackles the doghouse onto its side, then runs to break the chain off it. But now, how is he supposed to get into the house? Something opens the cellar doors for him. We hear it open off screen, and when he looks, it's open for him. I think Bandit opened it for him from beyond the grave. Through those doors, he finds Bandit's remains. Upstairs, Indy finds Todd. Todd picks him up and turns to the bed to see Todd, or at least the corpse that used to be Todd. Yes, he is now dead. The entity, perhaps death itself, or a demon, come to take this freshly freed soul for himself, drags Todd downstairs to the basement. With the basement door closed to him, Indy doesn't hesitate. He jumps through a window, shattering the glass, runs back through the cellar doors, and finds a strange cave down there. He runs through it after Todd screams and drags him back out. Then the dark figure appears. Indy cries at him, but it's no use. The figure approaches and covers Todd in the dark stuff. Todd tells him, "You're a good dog, but you can't save me. You gotta stay here." Todd's flesh melts away, leaving only his skeletal remains as he's pulled back into the dark. With the cellar doors closed, Indy is trapped. He sits and he stares at the cave. Until Vera arrives. She came to check on her brother. Instead, she finds Bandit's bones, and she finds Indy. Should Indy come to her and leave? A whistle from the basement draws his attention. Stay or go. Wait by the cave, death, or head up to the light. Life. Indy chooses life. In terms of what actually happened in the movie, my read is that the entity didn't directly kill Todd, but was more circling him, waiting for his death, so it could eventually help itself to his soul. The same thing happened to his grandpa, leaving Bandit trapped in the basement, and unfortunately, there was no Vera to let him out. At the same time, there are those hints. Past dogs all running away and everyone in the family dying young. Perhaps the entity can help death along, speed up the process, especially if you're living on its grounds. I think in Indy's bandana vision earlier, where the wall crumbles open, that's when it happened. A cave or a sort of portal opened up, allowing this entity to escape into our world and take up residence under the house. Perhaps that's something Bandit witnessed firsthand, and by sniffing one of Bandit's personal belongings, Indy was basically able to channel his spirit and see what he saw. It's mostly left undefined and functions more as a metaphor for terminal illness and a dog's experience watching it happen, unable to stop it. I've seen some take it a step further and say it's not just a metaphor, but in the movie, there is no ghost or entity. It's just Indy's interpretation of his owner going through a real, grounded experience, dying by some undefined illness. I don't really see any evidence in the movie to suggest this was all in Indy's head or anything like that. In fact, there's at least one moment where Indy isn't in the scene, and Todd sees muddy footsteps appearing in front of him. There's also the cellar door opening on its own. Similar to The Shining when the door opens to let Jack out of the closet, those are a couple of moments where the ghosts actually step in to do something, removing the doubt. They aren't just hallucinations, but have now actually intervened in the story. In the end, I quite enjoyed Good Boy. It didn't impact me the same way I've seen it hit others, where people called it extremely tense or heartbreaking. My investment was limited by the Todd of it all. And beyond that, I think it's pretty subjective. To what extent can you put that aside and immerse yourself in the idea alone of a dog trying to protect its owner, not wanting to let go even in the face of a primordial force? Perhaps death itself. Viscerally, the movie is a joy to watch, as an impressive and fun experiment. Leonberg described the process less as training Indy to be in a movie, and more about them learning how to make a movie around Indy. Every day meant solving a new riddle. How do we get Indy to do what we need him to do in this scene? For example, they'd get the perplexed head tilt by speaking in that command voice, as though you're saying, "Sit." But instead, you just say random words. Leonberg gives an example on Collider's set stories.
Neon sign.
They did a great job, I think in part thanks to patience, waiting for just the right reactions and waiting through all the footage to line things up just right. I also think they did a great job keeping the story grounded. I never saw Indy do anything where I was like, I know dogs can be smart, but that's kind of pushing it. He struck the perfect balance, giving Indy just the right amount of problem-solving ability and awareness that it felt like a real peek into the POV of a good boy. To be fair on my earlier criticisms, I think that's also why we don't really get to know Todd at all, because if we did, that would likely mean breaking from Indy's POV, because that point of view isn't just about where you place the camera, but also the information that's communicated. We don't know the details of Todd's illness, for example, because neither does Indy. Indy can't know them, but he can certainly sense something is wrong and can sense Todd's suffering. So we're given just enough info to know that too, firmly placing us within Indy's subjective experience. As far as directorial debuts go, it is definitely a strong start, and I'm very excited to see whatever he does next. Month of Terror concludes tomorrow with Trick or Treat.